Ladies and gentlemen, partners, member of civil society and media, and all those connecting and continuing to connect as I speak. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Karina Sugden. I am a lead governance officer here at the African Development Bank, and I shall be co-moderating today's event together with Mrs. Yonisha Sahi, who is the chair of the International Cooperation Review Group of the FATF. So before we start, please let me share some practical information. We have translation available today. We have both French, Portuguese, and Arabic. And you can access the interpretations through the icon at the lower right-hand side of your screen. So if you wish to have French or Portuguese or Arabic interpretation, please do use that icon at the lower part of your screen. As we start the panel sessions, if you have any questions and that you would like to pose to the panelists, please use the Q&A tab, which you also will see here at the bottom of your screens, to pose your questions and they shall be picked up. If you have any issues with IT or anything where you would like support, please please use the chat and the IT will come to you and provide support and respond. So I would now like to invite Mrs. Paula da Costa. She is Director of Integrity and Anti-Corruption Department at the African Development Bank, to deliver the welcoming remarks and take us through today's program. Paula, over to you.
Thank you very much, Karina. Good morning or good afternoon, as applicable. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, partners, and friends, on behalf of the African Development Bank, I'm honored to welcome you to this joint webinar with the Financial Action Task Force. Today is not just a webinar, it's a milestone. We have gathered to mark a moment of regional, national, and institutional achievement. The successful exit from FATF grade list of some of our member countries. This accomplishment is far more than a change in designation. It represents years of efforts across ministries, regulators, and supervisors, law enforcement agencies, judiciaries, company registries, financial intelligence units, designated non-financial business and professions, civil society organizations, and development partners, among others, to strengthening our systems, identify threats, close vulnerabilities, and demonstrate our commitment to the highest standards of integrity in the global financial environment. Exiting the grey list signals to the world that these countries have built stronger, more resilient, and more transparent financial ecosystem. It reflects discipline, coordination, and determination to meet demanding benchmarks. And for that, I want to acknowledge every team, every analyst, every policymaker, and every partner who played a role in this journey. But today's purpose is not only to celebrate Nigeria, South Africa, Burkina Faso, Tanzania, but also other regional countries that have since exited the grey list: Mozambique, Mali, Senegal, Botswana, Ethiopia, Ghana, Mauritius, Morocco, Tunisia, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. The FATF process has demonstrated that international confidence is not a one-time achievement. It is an ongoing responsibility. The reforms that the countries have implemented must now become part of our institutional DNA, embedded, sustained, and continuously improved. This workshop provides the space to do exactly that, to share knowledge, success stories, experiences, and challenges faced during the listing process. to provide a platform for dialogue among policymakers, regulators, financial institutions, and academies on strengthening AML, CFT, CPF frameworks that will avoid future repeat listings, to boost countries' international reputation and economic diplomacy through demonstration of political commitment to integrity, to governance, and financial transparency, to discuss how gains made to date could be sustained into the next round of mutual evaluation. Exiting the grey list is not the finish line. It is the starting point of a stronger, more proactive era. Our commitment going forward will determine how effectively we protect our financial systems, attract investment, safeguard trust, and uphold our reputation in the international community. So as we begin today's discussions, I encourage all of us to share openly, think strategically, and plan ambitiously. Let us draw from our collective experience and reaffirm our shared responsibility for the integrity of our financial landscape. At this juncture, allow me to acknowledge our distinguished speakers, Mrs. Elisa de Andra Madrazo, President of FATF, together with Mrs. Clark, FATF Executive Secretary, senior representatives from South Africa, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Tanzania, Mauritius, and Jamaica, and colleagues from the African Development Bank. Your presence underscores the importance of this dialogue. Today's session will run for about 1 hour and 40 minutes. Here's what to expect. Opening remarks by FATF President, country experience from South Africa, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Tanzania, best practices from sustaining the gains, insights from FATF ECRG, co-chair in Jamaica, questions and answer session, your opportunity to engage, ask questions, and share perspectives. Closing remarks by FATF Executive Secretary and the African Development Bank Director, Governance Director, Abdoulaye Coulibaly. And thank you once again for being here and for the hard work that brought us to this moment. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much, Paula. I very much like what you said. While today is a celebration, not just for those that are speaking, but many other countries, let us remember exiting the grey list isn't the finish line, it's a starting point. And let us all use this occasion to learn from one another. I'll now hand over to Yonesha and the other speakers. Yonesha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Karina. I just to check, I'm audible. Great, excellent. So thank you again, and also for the Director Santos da Costa for outlining today's objective so clearly. And so let me start by saying good afternoon or good morning to all our distinguished colleagues and our partners joining us today. By way of introduction, so I am Yonesha Sahai, and I am the co-chair of the Africa Joint Group. It is my great pleasure to introduce our two esteemed speakers who will deliver the welcome address today. They will provide important perspective of the work of the FATF, both as the global setter and as the guardian of the application of the standards, as well as the critical role played by the FATF-style regional bodies in supporting jurisdictions to implement and uphold the AML safety requirements. So without further ado, I will have the honor of inviting Mr. Abdoulaye Coulibaly, Director, Governance and Economic Reforms Department at the Africa Development Bank, for his opening remarks, and he will here be acting for the Vice President Umara. Over to you, Director.
Thank you very much. Mesdames et Messieurs, chers collègues, partners et amis, I hope that the translation is working well. Yeah. Bonjour et merci encore une fois d'être présent ici ce matin. J'ai effectivement le plaisir de vous accueillir donc à ce webinaire intitulé Sortir de la liste grise du GAFI, exemple de réussite et voie vers une conformité durable. Co-organisé donc par la Banque africaine de développement, et le groupe d'action financière Gafi. Il marque en effet un moment vraiment important pour notre continent. La sortie réussie de 6 de nos pays membres régionaux de la liste grise Gafi en 2025. Donc, félicitations à ces 6 pays. Ils ont démontré que l'Afrique peut répondre aux normes mondiales et renforcer sa position dans le système financier international. Nous saluons vos efforts collectifs et c'est pourquoi nous sommes ici aujourd'hui. Nous saluons le travail acharné des régulateurs, des superviseurs, des parlementaires, des forces de l'ordre, des ministères des Finances, de la société civile, mais aussi du secteur privé. La sortie de la liste grise, comme ça a été dit, ne s'est pas faite du jour au lendemain. Elle reflète la force de l'engagement de nos pays membres régionaux, leur forte volonté politique, les réformes institutionnelles et la collaboration entre les agences concernées. Si cette journée est placée sous le signe de la célébration, ce webinaire est aussi l'occasion de se tourner vers l'avenir. Comme beaucoup d'entre nous le savent, sortir de la liste grise n'est pas une fin en soi. Il s'agit d'une transition vers une réforme intense et une responsabilité durable. Les cadres mis en place doivent désormais faire partie intégrante des pratiques quotidiennes. Ils doivent être intégrés, contrôlés et améliorés en permanence. La confiance internationale ne s'acquiert pas une fois pour toutes. Elle se maintient grâce à la cohérence et un engagement à long terme. Ce webinaire offre une plateforme pour réfléchir au succès accompli et commencer à façonner l'avenir. Il nous permet de tirer les leçons apprises, de renforcer notre collaboration interne et de réfléchir de manière proactive à la pérennisation donc de ces acquis. À la Banque africaine de développement, nous reconnaissons également les pays qui sont en cours du processus d'inscription sur la liste grise et nous nous engageons à les accompagner dans cette démarche. Dans le cadre de notre plan d'action contre les flux financiers illicites, nous intensifions nos efforts pour garantir la durabilité des réformes. Permettez-moi de reconnaître et d'apprécier profondément notre partenariat avec le Gafi et ses organismes régionaux, SMLAG, GIABA, GABAC et FATF, dont les normes rigoureuses et l'engagement continu ont joué un rôle déterminant dans la mise en œuvre des réformes à travers le continent. Cette collaboration illustre ce que la coopération mondiale et régionale peut accomplir lorsque nous travaillons vers un objectif commun: préserver l'intégrité financière et promouvoir le développement durable. Merci au président du Gafi, merci au secrétaire exécutif du Gafi et merci à tous les membres du Gafi ici présents. Le respect des normes mondiales n'est donc pas seulement une question de conformité, mais aussi de protection de notre économie, de sauvegarde de l'intégrité de nos institutions, de soutien à l'investissement, de renforcement de la confiance mondiale dans nos pays et enfin de soutien à la mobilisation des ressources nationales de nos pays membres régionaux. Alors que nous entamons nos discussions aujourd'hui, j'encourage chacun à aborder les sessions avec ouverture d'esprit et vision de l'avenir. Soyons fiers du chemin parcouru, mais aussi soyons également lucides quant au travail qui reste à accomplir. Si nos systèmes financiers sont plus solides qu'auparavant, ils évoluent dans un monde en constante mutation, marqué par de nouvelles technologies, de nouvelles menaces, de nouvelles attentes réglementaires et de nouvelles opportunités. Pour rester en phase avec les normes mondiales, il faudra s'améliorer en permanence, se former en continu, mieux utiliser les données et renforcer la coopération entre toutes les parties prenantes. La Banque africaine de développement vous remercie encore une fois pour votre présence et pour les contributions que chacun d'entre vous a apportées pour nous permettre d'arriver là aujourd'hui. Je me réjouis à l'avance des discussions à venir et du prochain chapitre de notre voyage, fondé sur le partenariat, la résilience et l'engagement commun. Je vous remercie pour votre attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coulibaly. Indeed, your present today is a clear demonstration of the leadership role the African Development Bank continues to play in strengthening AML safety efforts across the continent. You have set the tone. We are here to acknowledge and celebrate the hard work of our African brothers and sisters. But certainly, as even President Da Costa mentioned earlier, this is not the end. The reforms has to be sustained. And we are here today to hear from our participants what are the mechanisms they are putting forward to help these reforms being sustained. So this leads me now to give me the pleasure to invite our second distinguished speaker, Ms. Eliza da Anda Madrazo, the president of the FATF, of course, someone who truly needs no introduction. As many of you know, the FATF plays a central role in guiding and supporting jurisdictions in the effective implementation of its standards and strengthening global cooperation to combat financial crime. Eliza, we are honored to have you with us today. And also, I would ask the co-chair of the Africa Joint Group to also acknowledge and thank for the support we receive, which allow us to deliver on our mandate. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ganesha. It is such a pleasure to join you today. I was looking at the list of participants, and I know that we have over 1,000 people joining us online. So good afternoon to all of you. Most of you are probably from the Africa region, and I think this shows how much impact and how much interest there is in this process. And it's my pleasure to provide some opening remarks today alongside with Acting Vice President Coulibaly. So thank you very much. I want to start with some information that actually came in the concept note of this webinar. That is that under estimates of the UN Trade and Development Report conducted in 2020, there is an estimate that $90 billion a year from illicit financial flows are lost in the African continent. And I wanted to start with this phrase because it matches very well with the last remarks of Acting Vice President Coulibaly, which has to do with the impact of these numbers. And we want to talk about what's behind the statistics. And of course, these illicit funds are money that are being lost, public funds that are being lost to, for example, tax evasion and corruption, but also resources of the people, of the societies, of the families that are being lost for fraud, for cybercrime, for organized crime, and also very regrettably to terrorist financing. And behind these statistics, it's families that are living in fear and that are being impacted by crime and by terrorism. And unfortunately, to fight this threat and risk, which is global, which is very, very high, we need everyone to work together. And that's where the FATF comes in and the global network of regional bodies. And I want to really emphasize this point because often the FATF is considered as a body that it's outside of the region, of the African continent in particular. So I want to take some time to explain how are we working with the global network, how the process of the Great List works, how the criteria applies, changes that we have made in recent times. So through my opening remarks, I will walk through this information, in particular for those of you joining us today or that will look at this webinar in the future as it is being recorded. I want to understand more of this process and the role of the FATF. So the FATF, together with the regional bodies, including 4 in Africa, MENAFATF, GIABA, GABAC, and SMLAC, we bring together 200 jurisdictions that are committed to closing the gaps where criminals exploit and to safeguard the integrity of the financial system globally. What we do are mainly 3 things. First, we assess the financial risks. Secondly, we set the standards and make sure that they're updated and up to those risks. And third, and very important to the conversation today, we evaluate and we monitor how the jurisdiction's defenses are against this illicit finance threat. All of these actions are peer-based, which means that the FATF and the global network, the FSRBs, are created and are led and worked on a daily basis by members of those jurisdictions. These are experts that are working during part of their day at home in a financial intelligence unit, in the judiciary, as a supervisor, as a policymaker. And then on top of that, they're part of the projects of either the FATF or the regional body. And that work is, of course, supported crucially by the executive secretariats and the teams, the secretariats in each of these institutions. Today, you will hear from our executive secretariat, Ms. Violaine Kirk, at the end. And I'm very happy to have the strong support of the secretariat. And that's the same with each of the FSRBs. But I want to signal the importance of this peer review along all the way, in setting the standards, in helping implementing them, and also in the assessing of the work. Now, let's move to the Great List. Of course, that is the focus of this webinar, and we call it the ICRG. For those of you that don't know the acronym, it's because that's the working group that it's called International Cooperation Review Group. And it's truly a cooperative environment where we bring together joint groups. And Jonesha, who is your moderator today, she's, as mentioned at the beginning, one of the co-chairs of the joint groups for the Africa region. And that means that in that joint group, you have members of both the FATF and members of the region of Africa, so of the regional FSRDs. And this is very important because it's that joint group and that spirit of collaboration that brings the experts that assess where the country stands and help develop an action plan when a country is included in the Great List. So part of the process of being identified in the Great List is developing a very comprehensive action plan. I'm sure our colleagues that will be speaking after exiting the Great List will go into this, but it's truly a joint effort between the region members, the FATF members, and the jurisdiction that commits to comply and to fulfill the actions in this action plan. So the real goal is to identify those deficiencies and to work together. It's not a punitive, and someone used at the beginning of this seminar the word sanction. It is really not that spirit of the listing of the FATFs to sanction a country. It is to identify that that country needs to improve, to strengthen its AML CFT regime, and to work together in mobilizing resources, sometimes from technical assistance providers such as the African Development Bank and other stakeholders into the region to help support the jurisdictions. And it's always very heartening from my side to hear from ministers, from central bank governors, that this process helps create momentum and bring the reforms into the jurisdiction. So if I could sum it up in one sentence, we see the ICRG process and the listing process in the Great List as a catalyst for reform. That is the purpose. It is not to punish a country. It is not to put a country in that position indefinitely. It is to create a catalyst for reform where we identify that that is needed. In that terms, I mentioned already the action plan, and I wanted to highlight the political commitment and the importance that we have in this ICRG process and in the Great List of the high-level commitment, and also of a mechanism, a cooperation between the agencies within the country. We see that the ICRG helps very much on both fronts, on creating the support at a high level, political support, but also in coordinating the agencies in an effort that it's nationwide for the benefit of the people of those jurisdictions. So let me talk a little bit of the active work that we do in supporting the countries in this journey. The first one is that we work together, as I said, from countries of different regions. And today you will hear from Ms. Maureen Sims from Jamaica, so a different region in the Caribbean, but I will share her experience. And we do see that FSRBs, so the regional bodies from different regions, come together, and that expertise and that sisterhood of bodies of FSRBs is really tangible and important for this process. And also the support of the technical assistance providers and capacity building, such as I signaled, the African Development Bank. Where we are now in terms of the African continent, well, the 54 countries in the continent are part of the FATF family, of this global network, through their membership in the FSRBs. And up to now, we had identified 17 jurisdictions. And as we know, we had very good news for Africa recently. And now we have 17 countries that have exited the Great List. So this means that they have a stronger system to protect their financial system, their economy, and for the benefit of their people. This is, as I say, a real collaboration and peer learning review where we exchange a lot of information and support each other. So I'm really happy to be part of this webinar to learn more from the countries that exited the list. But I really want to emphasize the point that all my previous speakers have shared, which is that this is an important step at the beginning of the next journey, which is to sustain those reforms. The end goal is not to exit the list, but to have those strengthened institutions and reforms give benefit for the people of the jurisdictions of the region and at the end of the globe in general. Before I close from my side, it's an opportunity for me to share with you some of the efforts that we have done in the FATF to support the countries around the globe, and in particular with an emphasis to low and medium capacity jurisdictions and a lot of emphasis in the African continent. The first one is that we revise our grade listing criteria for the next round. So this is the next round globally that we have just started. And these criteria will be more focused on the countries that pose greater risk to international financial system and taking away the pressure on those countries that have low and medium capacities. So that's a very important change that we had. The second one is that we launched a project that is specifically for low capacity countries and how we can better support them to meet the FATF standards. The third one that I'm very proud to see some of you here is that we have, for the first time in the FATF, guest jurisdictions of the global network joining us at the table under their flag. Jamaica being one of them, Nigeria, another one. And this has been very, very important for us to learn from their experience at the FATF table on all the areas, but also that includes the grade list and the process that they went through. Another effort is that we're trying to do more events such as this one, but also, for example, the joint expert meetings that we had together with Java just last month. So that was an effort to bring for the first time this meeting to the African region. And we're trying to give more guidance and support to the jurisdictions, for example, through the guidance on asset recovery that we just published, and through better collaboration and cooperation in terms of coordinating the technical assistance for the countries that need it with our observers and partner organizations. So with all of this, just an opportunity for me to share the work that we do. I will make myself available to stay through the entirety of this webinar because the FATF places a lot of importance to the engagement with the region. And so I will be listening very carefully on behalf of our members to your contributions and your questions. Thank you for everyone connected for your interest. I wish you a productive webinar. And congratulations to those countries that have exited the list in the recent time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elisa, again for those insightful comments and also for the continued vision and commitment in advancing the mandates of the FATF and also strengthening the system of all countries, member countries. Indeed, your leadership and also this inclusive approach have greatly strengthened collaboration across the network. And as you mentioned, we need to work together. I think this is the key word. We should be able to work together to reinforce the FATF brand. We also took note of the changes that has been brought, to help low capacity countries in navigating the FATF process. And definitely that would be beneficial, taking into consideration the context of those countries. So now let's move forward to the next part of our program, which will focus on the practical experiences and lesson learned from jurisdictions that have recently exited the ICRG process. And so for this segment, I will now call upon Karina to moderate the first part, and then I will do the second part of the session. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you so much, Yonesha. I'm just going to take an opportunity, a 30-second opportunity to ask all speakers, because I've now noticed everyone's here. Please put on your video, everyone, and Tanya, our IT support, will quickly take a snapshot of us all. So everyone, please put on your videos and let us smile. And Tanya, are we good?
We are all there now. Okay, let me start. Thank you.
Okay. Is it good? Tanya, can we move forward?
He's okay now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Dionesha. So moving on with the program, as you said, we're starting our next session, and very excited here to have representatives from 4 of the countries that recently exited the FATF grey list. Our guests today have played pivotal roles in leading their countries through lengthy and challenging processes of exiting the FATF grey list, and they have a wealth of experience and knowledge to share with us. So our speakers today include from South Africa, we have Mr. Ismail Moniat from the Department of the National Treasury, and he served as the head of he serves also as the head of the South Africa's delegation to the FATF. From Burkina Faso, we have Madame Aissata Diallo. Elle est présidente de la CENTIF, qui est la cellule nationale de traitement des informations financières de Burkina Faso. From Tanzania, we have Mrs. Sauda Msemo, Deputy Governor of the Bank of Tanzania. And finally, Nigeria, we have Ms. Hafsat Bakari, who is the CEO of the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. Welcome, everyone. So as said by Yonesha, we're going to start by hearing from the 2 cases of Nigeria and Tanzania. And I would like to kick off this conversation by asking both Madame Bakari and Madame Mesemo, and starting with Madame Bakari, can you tell us what was the one biggest factor or action that helped you exit the grey list? Madame Bakari.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Good morning, Madam President, who has made so many fantastic and impossible things to happen within the global network, including the guest initiative of which Nigeria is a beneficiary. Good morning, Madam President. Good to see you again. Good morning, Mr. Kolibale. Good morning, esteemed colleagues and participants. I would like to start by appreciating the ingenuity of the African Development Bank and FATF for organizing this event, of which we consider very timely. I'm particularly delighted to share Nigeria's experience in implementing its ICRG action plan, and we're positive that the discussions that will contribute to national and global efforts to strengthen financial systems. The one biggest factor of which we have so many, but sticking to your question, following the grey listing of Nigeria developed excellent coordination mechanism. And I would say that the biggest factor was the effective coordination, which was supported by a high-level political commitment. At the highest political commitment we had, which was supported by the African Joint Group, GIABA, all stakeholders, and the hard-working group of people from the public and private sector who made this to happen. The highest political consideration, political commitment we got was from our president, who issued a directive to all members of the Federal Executive Council or heads of agencies to prioritize the implementation of the ICRG process and to address all deficiencies within the timeline. There was no room for us to default, so that was why we're able to exit within the timeline, and because that was our strategic objective. At the policy level, Nigeria ensured the alignment of the national AML-CFT-CPF strategy and action plan with that of the ICRG. The government ensured availability of human and financial resources needed for the process. With this tone set from the highest level, the NFIU, being the National Secretariat, served as the overall coordinating agency driving implementation and ensuring accountability. This was done collaboratively with an excellent group and fantastic working group called the ICRG Contact Group, which constituted of AML-CFT experts drawn from each competent authority to drive reforms within their respective agencies. This contact group sensitized relevant agencies on their roles and guided them in establishing reforms that resulted in the implementation of the ICRG action plan within the time limit, and then the eventual exit of Nigeria from the grey list. The NFIU, together with the contact group members, interfaced with the joint group, reporting progress over the period and providing feedback to the competent authorities. Nigeria's experience demonstrates that strong coordination is essential to achieving and sustaining effectiveness. So the most important thing for us was the shared dogged determination at the highest level to ensure that we exited the grey list. And I would say that that was the most important factor that led to the exiting of the grey list. Thank you, Yanisha.
Thank you very much, Madame Bakari. Over to Madame Mesemo. So, coordination for Nigeria. Do you share that view? Please come in and share from the case of Tanzania. What was one of the biggest factors that helped you exit from the grey list?
Thank you very much, Madam Karina. Greetings to Madam President and all distinguished participants. Yes, first of all, it's like maybe I don't know. I would like to say it's like somehow we copied. Of course, we really have a very similar experience. We also had a very high political commitment, of course, through the Minister for Finance, who wrote formally to FATF, committing the government, committing the country to cooperating effectively with FATF in delivering the mandate of strengthening the AML CFT CPF regime for Tanzania. So for our case, because we usually have a national multidisciplinary committee, which I chair, but this time now with the action plan that was to be implemented after the grey listing in October 2022 for the period of 2 years, we thought it was really important, and we had a highest level, of course, president, but through the prime minister, we had a national executive committee chaired by the prime minister of the United Republic of Tanzania, and bringing together all key ministries that were directly responsible for the implementation of the action plan. But also beneath the executive committee chaired by the prime minister, we had a steering committee chaired by the chief secretary, where all permanent secretaries responsible, actually all of them, not just those from the ministries responsible, but all the permanent secretaries will have a specific working session, and also CEOs of all institutions responsible for the AML CFT CPF in the country. So all of them would have a session where now our committee, the one which I chair, the National Multidisciplinary Committee, will table the progress, discuss at the steering committee chaired by the chief secretary, and also that will then be submitted to the executive committee chaired by the prime minister. So you can see that the highest level of political commitment was a key to fast and effective implementation of our action plan, because surely no one would wish to be sort of reported that they are not doing their assignments to ensuring effective ML safety CPF regime on their part. So we had all these in place, and the technical committee that I called it it's called the multidisciplinary committee, which I chair, had full support from all levels of leadership in the country. So we would get a platform to update the highest levels, and then before submission of our reports, that's how it would work, ensure that at least we have updated the progress, and if there are any sort of challenges, we also identify them with them and what we think should be the solution. And indeed, this way it made it possible for the country to come out of the grey list. Of course, we have a secretariat, who actually secretariat is appointed by the Minister for Finance and is in the laws. So that was a key coordinating point for this exercise to be smooth throughout our implementation of the action plan. So with now having the highest level of political commitment, then we had this interinstitutional collaboration and coordination. It was really effective, and we really feel that it helped us a lot because everyone became fully aware of what they are supposed to do from their institutions. And through these key institutions, we had focal persons who were responsible to ensure that they submit their inputs timely to the secretariat, but they sit together, discuss, consolidate the report, and now the report was to go through the hierarchy of submission to the multidisciplinary committee, to the steering committee, and to the executive committee by the Prime Minister. So you can see how the hierarchy of ensuring the quality of submission to the FATF, but also the kind of strengthening collaboration amongst the institutions, which made it possible every time for each one to be responsible, to take full accountability in ensuring that nothing is left out throughout the implementation. But maybe I'll come back later, but we see this effective coordination between institutions, but law enforcement agencies and supervisory authorities having a key forum to discuss issues of shared interest within themselves. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think before I let you go, because you have very similar stories from Nigeria, and you both highlighted coordination as the big thing. Maybe, as we heard in our openings, everybody put the focus on how do you sustain this? Question to you, are you seeing, how are you currently, have you been able to keep up some of these structures? Since you've left the grey list, or what are you seeing as some of the challenges that may come up? And I'll start with you, Madame Misomo.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It's real sustainable. We still have these fora happening. The LEAs and the supervisory and regulatory authorities are still meeting on regular, it is on quarterly basis. And also I didn't want to go into further details, but we have these, they are invited. I think maybe some of them are also in this call if they could join because they were having difficulties with the link, but I hope I will take stock later how many were able to join. But we are sustaining these efforts. We have them, we meet, they meet, but also we have other sessions when we have like capacity building sessions, awareness sessions, we call them. So this is real
keeping it alive.
possible. Yes, we were able to sustain it, and surely the good thing also with the interinstitutional collaboration, these key institutions are indeed the one who have their nominees forming part of the members of the National Multidisciplinary Committee that I chair. So you can see that we still have that continuity, and we see, greener, lighter forward in sustaining these efforts of fighting the money laundering, TF and PF.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'll change the theme a little bit and come back to Madame Bakari, just to look at some of the specific actions and areas where that you had to deal with as you were exiting, and one of them was around the so-called non-financial businesses and professions, and supervision of these, or abbreviated DNFBPs, is something that many African countries struggle with, but it's something that massively improved in the case of Nigeria. Would you say that this was one of the most important achievements? And again, looking forward, how has this helped overall strengthening this in the case of Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Karina, for this topic, which is, like you said, very, very important to us. The most important decision in Nigeria was to have not just treat the ICRG, covering all institutions as a defensive position, but having a frontal, attacking format to go head on and conquer our challenges in its entirety. And this has resulted in phenomenal achievements which we have achieved and which we are now acknowledging in the DNFBPs. While the improvement in the DNFBP's supervision is a laudable achievement, I cannot pick the most important achievement because all our efforts led to the, to the strategic objective of exiting the grey list. Of course, the supervision of DNFBPs witnessed major improvements, starting with enhanced market controls, market entry controls. These enhanced measures ensure that only fit and proper persons and entire entities were permitted to establish and operate within the designated non-financial sector. As a result, only properly registered, licensed, and supervised financial institutions were allowed to conduct businesses, while entities operating without approval or engaging in unregulated or illegal activities were promptly identified and escalated to law enforcement agencies for investigation and prosecution. This approach not only protects the integrity of the financial system, but also reduces vulnerabilities exploited by criminals, therefore reinforces Nigeria's overall preventive framework. Additionally, we completed comprehensive sectoral risk assessment for all DNFBPs. These assessments enable regulators to identify and prioritize high-risk sectors. Since the grey list, over 95 outreach programs and sensitizations have been initiated. The outcomes of these supervisory-led actions led to over 60% increase in compliance by reporting entities, especially in the detection and reporting of STRs, identification of PEPs, and application of enhanced due diligence, as well as implementation of targeted financial structures. Some other efforts that should not go unmentioned are the launching of our robust beneficial ownership, our passage and issuance of relevant laws, regulations, especially to cater for AML CFT requirements, our risk assessment exercises, which improved risk understanding, our prioritization of international cooperation, ML and TF investigations, prosecutions, and recovery. We all acknowledged in Nigeria that one of the, when we started this process, one of the most difficult tasks we had was the supervision of DNFBPs. But going through these processes that we have gone through, the approaches we have taken, the outreaches we have conducted, the role of bringing together the regulators, the supervisors, and also the law enforcement officers in a coordinated approach, under the Interministerial Committee has really worked very well. And then, the approach was just to involve the leadership and the thematic experts we have in Nigeria. We made use of all the thematic experts that we have in Nigeria, even those that are not currently within the, operating within the cycle, we consulted them. So that led us to a whole country approach confronting it. And I think that bringing the public and private sectors into it, working with them diligently, this is a consistent thing, because as far as we are concerned in Nigeria, the most important thing is not just exiting the grey list, but the sustainability going forward, ensuring that the DNFBPs understand that it's not just about exiting the grey list, but a compliance culture that is entrenched within the processes of how they do their things. And that has led to the phenomenal achievement. And we are now, continuing with it. Sustainability is the key word for us, when it comes to dealing with the DNFBPs, and ensuring that going forward, since we are going to be approaching the next mutual evaluation very soon, we are now ensuring that goes, the horizon should be more than that. It should be something that we entrench. And going forward, Nigeria has also established an annual evaluation, which will be taking place yearly, for us to be evaluating our institutions and also analyzing the gaps that, after a gap analysis, analyzing the gaps and ensure that we bring up mitigating measures to ensure sustainability. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Madame Bakary. That was great. I think you touched actually on quite a number of things in addition to what I asked you initially. I'm very aware we have two other countries that we want to hear from. But before I pass over to Yonesha and those two examples, just want to give a last opportunity to Madame Misemo. Is there anything that from your experience that you're particularly proud of and that you're also thinking of, like, that created the basis for sustained efforts in the future? So please, very, very short, just 1 minute, Madame Misemo, and then we will move over to the other countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Karina. Yeah, we are proud of the already mentioned the highest level of political commitment, interagency, effective coordination and collaboration, but also the awareness of the public and private sector in the fight against money laundering and terrorist financing, because we continue with these awareness sessions, outreach sessions. So we see them being a very strong foundation for sustaining our efforts going forward. But last but not least, is strong support from the global community. As Madam President mentioned at the beginning, we have a very good support from FATF, our regional body, SAMLAG, but we have the IMF, World Bank, and other bilateral partners who are really ready to assist in terms of technical assistance, but even sometimes we agree on some sort of benchmarks to help us also leapfrog the efforts on this fight. So we are proud that we can sustain the efforts, but much so the risk-based supervision that has been entrenched in all supervisory and regulatory authorities, we see it as a good focus going forward so that resources are well spent in this effort going forward. I think I will stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. There's so much to hear and share.
Yeah.
And really, I'm not going to try and repeat and pull out some. I think we all heard it, and I've taken note, and we can come back to it in the Q&A. But let's move on. Yonesha, over to you. Let's hear from our other two guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina. Indeed, this is quite engaging discussion and already full of so much of practical insight coming out. And I think it will not only be useful for those countries on ICRG, but even for countries actually preparing or undergoing a mutual evaluation. So to continue again with this rich exchange, we'll now hear from Burkina Faso and then South Africa. So starting with Burkina Faso, it's my pleasure to invite Mrs. Asaita Diallo, and she played a key role in the country's successful delisting from the grey list. And I must say, Burkina Faso had one of the most extensive ICRG action plan, which required significant mobilization of resources and sustained effort, especially in challenging economic contexts. So this achievement is truly commendable. Madame Diallo, je vous souhaite la bienvenue et c'est un plaisir de vous avoir parmi nous aujourd'hui comme intervenant. Alors, pourriez-vous nous dire en 1 minute quel serait, selon vous, le conseil le plus important à donner à un pays confronté à un processus de listing?
Merci beaucoup, co-chair. Et je voudrais d'abord féliciter le groupe de la Banque africaine de développement ainsi que le groupe d'action financière pour l'initiative de ce webinaire et également les remercier d'avoir associé le Burkina Faso à cette session de partage d'expérience. Pour avoir suivi de près la réalisation de l'achèvement du plan d'action du Burkina Faso, le conseil que je voudrais peut-être donner à un pays qui est sur la liste grise, c'est véritablement d'avoir un ancrage institutionnel très impactant. Parce que la question de l'impact va avec le soutien indéfectible des autorités pour faciliter en fait la coordination et l'intervention des différentes parties prenantes. Donc, c'est très important qu'il y ait cet ancrage qui soit clarifié pour bénéficier de ce soutien. Le deuxième conseil que je voudrais donner, c'est de travailler à créer un processus participatif avec tous les acteurs de la LBCFT, aussi bien du secteur public que du secteur privé et des organisations de la société civile, pour pouvoir créer une synergie d'action pour mener à bien ce processus. Et le troisième point, comme j'ai juste 1 minute, c'est de participer, de travailler à renforcer régulièrement les capacités des acteurs, surtout les acteurs des secteurs à haut risque. Et éventuellement, si cela est nécessaire, c'est d'appliquer les sanctions. parce que les sanctions, ça dissuade véritablement le refus de la mise en œuvre des obligations. Je m'en arrête là pour l'instant. Merci beaucoup, co-chef.
Non, merci beaucoup, Madame Diallo. Effectivement, vous avez souligné 4 points très importants. Bien sûr, on va revenir élaborer plus sur ces points que vous avez mentionnés. Mais pour l'instant, je me tourne. I will now turn to Mr. Ismail Momotniat from the National Treasury of South Africa, and he's also the head of the South African delegation to the FATF. So South Africa was delisted in October after successfully demonstrating the implementation of what many would describe as a complex and demanding action plan. Although South Africa is an FATF member, I'm sure, Mr. Momo, the country still face its own set of challenges during that implementation. And no doubt you will have many experiences to share with us from success to obstacles. So in 1 minute again, what could you share with our audience today about the thing you wish you would have done differently?
I'm not sure what we could have done differently. Sorry, morning or afternoon, everyone.
Morning.
Because I think that South Africa got grey listed because of what we had state capture under our former president. And where our law enforcement institutions, our revenue collection agency, many institutions were deliberately weakened. So when the mutual evaluation actually happened in 2019, we were probably at our weakest. And in a sense, being grey listed helped us to focus on what we had to do for the country anyway, which is to fix up those institutions that were broken under state capture. And so that was what happened. It certainly needed the political will to become stronger, which we saw, and there was a focus. And I think, like the other countries, issues like coordination and so on, I think were clear challenges. So the grey listing focused our minds on getting institutions to work together. In fact, I would say to them that, it doesn't help to say, I've done my job and I've done it well as one institution, but it's that other institution that hasn't done its job. Because at the end of the day, the country is being judged. And the issue is, how do the institutions actually work together to promote the interests of the country in fighting money laundering or terror financing? And if you take broader objectives like corruption and so on, which took root in a very strong way under our former president under state capture, I think to deal with those from a national perspective, interest perspective, I think was also quite important. So I would attribute our sort of exiting by firstly doing what we needed to do for the country, strengthening our institutions, reversing the effects of state capture, and secondly, to make sure that the institutions not only worked well, but they actually worked together and coordinated and looked at effectiveness or implementation as a critical element and not just the laws of the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Momo. I think you've also touched on a lot of very important points. And as you mentioned, we need that whole of country approach. Really, it's not one institutional responsibility only. But to have this whole of a government approach, we need that political commitment. And I think that is the message across we have been hearing since at the beginning of the webinar. But then what are the processes that you have put in place now to sustain that political commitment and sustain the commitment across all the agencies to be able to continue with the reforms?
Look, what's going to be important for us is, fortunately, and I don't say unfortunately, we face another mutual evaluation in 2027. And as you know, the mutual evaluation is a backward-looking process in the sense that it's what you do in the 2 years before, say about a year before you actually go to plenary. And so that is forcing us to continue to, on the course of improving or strengthening the systems that we have. So it's an added factor to do so. But I think more broadly, it's about certainly getting the political commitment and for South Africa being a FATF member, it was deeply embarrassing to be grey listed. So the whole issue was, how can South Africa ensure that it's more effective against fighting crimes? We still have huge challenges. Even as we speak, we have a Madlanga Commission going into very deep corruption in the police force and in our policing system. Now, in South Africa, we like to, we announce our problems. So the issue will be, how do you actually continue to clean up? I think for the sake of the country, as I say, but there is a mutual evaluation coming. So that's an added factor. And if we really want investors, South Africa is quite an important financial center in the region. And we've had very mediocre economic growth since state capture. And we really need to get through structural changes to improve our growth, to get investors to come in South Africa in larger numbers, and obviously to deal with the broader problems of inequality, poverty, and so on. So that's what's focused. But we have the structures like an interdepartmental committee, which reports regularly to the cabinet in government. And we want to maintain those structures. And as we see all the different entities kind of working their program, they're beginning to take note of their impact on other organizations and vice versa. And I think keeping that up is really very important. I think the one lesson I learned is institutions actually don't talk to each other. And that's something I think I'm hoping that we've begun to change that culture.
Thank you very much indeed. And that also link up to what Madame Diallo was saying during her intervention. So let me go back to Mrs. Diallo to get a bit of more insight from her experience. Madame Diallo, si vous pouvez maintenant nous partager davantage votre point de vue sur un aspect très essentiel du plan d'action de Burkina Faso. Et ça retourne encore une fois sur la coordination nationale, qui était un élément clé de votre plan d'action. Si vous pouvez nous expliquer comment vous avez réussi à surmonter les difficultés internes de coordination, mais aussi de pouvoir obtenir l'engagement de l'ensemble des autorités compétentes.
Merci beaucoup. Concernant cette question de la coordination, je dois avouer qu'au niveau du Burkina Faso, la clé de la réussite a été la sensibilisation continue et l'approche coordonnée que nous avons eue avec l'ensemble des acteurs. Ce qui a suscité en réalité un engouement à tous les niveaux, que ce soit au niveau du secteur public, au niveau du secteur privé et des ONG, parce qu'ils ont pris la mesure de l'enjeu, en fait, du processus et de l'impact éventuel du maintien de notre pays sur la liste grise. Donc, nous avions déjà un comité de coordination, un comité national de coordination qui était fonctionnel. Et ce comité, en synergie avec les autres acteurs, nous avons pu nous appuyer en fait sur cette structure existante pour orchestrer en fait la mise en œuvre de notre plan d'action. Concrètement, en fait, nous sommes allés sur 4 phases essentielles. Nous avons déjà identifié l'ensemble des structures responsables de la mise en œuvre, de la correction des défaillances stratégiques qui ont été identifiées. Et nous les avons sensibilisés sur leur rôle à travers des communications ciblées. Ces communications ciblées nous ont permis d'avoir leur adhésion et leur engagement, aussi bien au niveau des départements ministériels, de même qu'au niveau de l'ensemble des acteurs du secteur privé et des organisations de la société civile. À l'issue de ces communications ciblées, nous avons identifié en leur sein des points focaux qui vont assurer la liaison entre la structure de coordination et les structures qui ont été identifiées pour la mise en œuvre. Et ces points focaux ont été formés et identifiés, formés et équipés en fait d'outils appropriés pour leur permettre de suivre et surtout de nous faire parvenir les éléments de progrès pour enrichir le rapport. Enfin, nous avons créé également, bon, pas enfin, nous avons mis en œuvre aussi des groupes WhatsApp. Des groupes WhatsApp pour faciliter les échanges et surtout identifier rapidement les goulots d'étranglement pour pouvoir les résorber et lancer, faire des alertes pour facilement avoir la remontée d'informations pour renseigner notre rapport en temps réel. Au fur et à mesure, au lieu de patienter, en fait, attendre les échéances, les rapports étaient mis à jour de façon continue pour nous permettre de respecter les délais. Et également, nous avons identifié une équipe restreinte d'experts qui a été mise en place pour pouvoir centraliser les informations par résultat immédiat. Et ce sont les membres de ce groupe restreint, ces experts thématiques, qui ont été chargés de suivre tout le processus avec l'équipe de coordination. Nous avons mis en place le comité de suivi, comme je le disais, et c'est ce comité qui était désigné pour participer à l'ensemble des réunions avec les évaluateurs du groupe conjoint. L'équipe n'a pas du tout changé. Du début jusqu'à la fin du processus, nous avons maintenu chaque expert et chaque expert était responsable d'un résultat immédiat précis du processus de collecte avec les points focaux jusqu'au renseignement du rapport de progrès et à la valorisation des informations auprès des évaluateurs. Et le défi particulier qui a été le nôtre au niveau du Burkina a consisté surtout aux différents changements institutionnels que nous avons connus. Mais nous avons su reprendre en fait le dessus parce que dès les changements institutionnels, nous nous approchons des nouvelles autorités, nous les sensibilisons sur les enjeux du processus et heureusement, à chaque fois, nous avons eu vraiment leur adhésion, nous avons été compris, nous avons été accompagnés, aussi bien en termes de résorption des difficultés que de la mise en œuvre véritablement des ressources nécessaires pour pouvoir exécuter les différentes actions du plan d'action. Merci beaucoup. Maintenant,
Merci. Oui, allez-y.
ah bon, c'était pour répondre à la deuxième partie de la question, mais je vous laisse la parole.
Ok, vous avez 1 minute. Je vous laisse.
D'accord. Alors, en fait, la deuxième partie de la question portait, je pense, sur le maintien de cette approche-là. Je vais répondre sans embâche par absolument parce que non seulement la coordination est maintenue, mais nous avons même renforcé ce dispositif à la lumière de l'expérience que nous avons eue de tout le processus de l'ICRG. Et donc, le dispositif de coordination est renforcé. Le processus est en cours pour acter ce renforcement-là. Et parce que nous sommes convaincus que sortir de la liste grise, je pense que ça a été dit dans les propos liminaires, sortir de la liste grise n'est en réalité qu'une victoire d'étape. Le processus a été révélateur pour l'ensemble des acteurs, donc nous profitons en fait pour les aider à encore mieux comprendre le dispositif, à le renforcer, parce que nous ne devons pas uniquement répondre aux exigences d'un plan d'action, mais nous devons continuer à renforcer les réformes, à consolider nos acquis pour avoir un dispositif encore plus robuste. Et c'est dans cette dynamique que nous sommes. Et notre comité national de coordination est aujourd'hui acculé par l'ensemble des acteurs qui ont compris l'enjeu de leurs responsabilités et chacun à son niveau, surtout les assujettis, ils tiennent véritablement à renforcer leur dispositif parce qu'ils ont compris que cela y va même de leur propre intérêt et de leur protection et de la protection de l'ensemble du système. Donc, cette prise en compte de la conscience collective nous a conduit même à encore aller plus loin. Et le mécanisme va encore avoir plus de personnes, plus d'identités et véritablement sera renforcé pour pleinement jouer son rôle parce que nous ne voulons plus retourner dans la liste grise et nous sommes déterminés en réalité à approfondir nos réformes Et donc, l'approche participative est maintenue. Nous ne lâchons pas le contact, en fait, avec les acteurs. Nous maintenons la dynamique pour mieux préparer le troisième cycle des évaluations mutuelles qui commence très bientôt pour le Burkina. Et il nous faut faire la preuve en réalité que les réformes que nous avons fait valoriser ne sont pas des réformes pour sortir du plan d'action, mais ce sont des réformes robustes pour une pérennité de la durabilité de notre dispositif national de LBCFT. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Diallo. I think the second key word of today would be that sustainability of the reforms, which is equally important as we all embark on the next phase of this journey. Maybe, Karina, before giving back to you the floor, can I just quickly go back to Mr. Momo and ask him, his experience as the head of delegation? I'm sure you must have had challenges when it comes to resources, lots of demands from different authorities. So how did you prioritize resources and handle competing demand and interests during this very challenging process?
Look, I think in our cases, there were enough resources. The problem was how the resources were being used. Now, I guess it helped that firstly, as the head of delegation, what we had when we got grey listed, we had left it to our intelligence unit to head the delegation. But they don't really have the power, I think, to bring all different departments together. So it helped when I think as Treasury, we took over the head of the FATF delegation. And it helped, I guess, that with the Treasury deals with all the departments. So it was easier then to deal with the heads of the other organizations. So even though I'd stopped being acting head of the department, the fact that there was someone seen to be very senior from the National Treasury heading it, I think helped. I think the other issue that helped was that we always took the issues to cabinet. We reported every 4 months. And that helped because it was very clear that the president was fully behind this program. He asked lots of questions. Other ministers were behind it. And so everyone felt compelled. They knew it was a national priority. And so really, we didn't have any problems with anyone saying we don't want to work or so. They knew that we were all going to be held accountable by our political bosses. And I think that helped.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, you're indeed, with the political commitment also comes accountability. And this really helps in driving towards a sense of a national priority and deliver on the objectives. So I will now, I think we have run a bit of a time, Karina. So I will quickly hand over to you for the next part of the discussion.
Thank you so much. This was really excellent. And we will come back and we will bring all these points together after this session that we have right now. Yonesha, you don't get to go away. You don't get to be only a moderator today. I now invite you to join in this next panel together with Miss Maureen Sims, who's the head of Jamaica's delegation to the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. And she's also serving as the deputy governor of the Bank of Jamaica. As was mentioned in the opening, it is not just the African continent that has countries that have been through this delisting process. There are experiences and practices to be shared from across the globe. And also, Yonesha, in addition to being co-chair for the ICRG, she was also pivotal in the process of delisting in Mauritius. And Mauritius has now had a good number of years coming out of this process. So we now turn to both of you, starting with Maureen. Maybe, please, could you describe for us your country's experiences in the ICRG? So that we can learn from other regions about the process. And what would be the advice that you would give to your African colleagues or our African colleagues? Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you to the FATF and the African Development Bank for the opportunity to share Jamaica's experience with the ICRG process and to reflect on lessons that may be useful to other regions. Good morning, Madam President and other participants on this webinar. Just to correct you a little bit, Karina, I'm a former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica. Currently, I serve as advisor and the prime contact for Jamaica in its email safety program. Jamaica entered the FATF ICRG process in 2020 at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic with a focused yet ambitious agreed 13-point action plan spanning 5 immediate outcomes and to be completed within 24 months. The action plan required us to confront and address strategic weaknesses in the design, coordination, and implementation of our email safety framework. At its core, the action plan centered on 4 priority areas. First, we conducted a comprehensive national risk assessment to establish a clear, evidence-based understanding of Jamaica's money laundering and terrorist financing risks. That risk understanding was then translated into concrete policies and strategies embedded within a time-bound action plan to guide implementation and accountability. Second, we strengthened our beneficial ownership framework for legal persons, bringing that framework fully into alignment with the FATF Recommendation 24 and ensuring effective implementation, including sanctions for non-compliance. Third, we expanded the scope and effectiveness of supervision by bringing the microcredit sector, attorneys, and TCSPs under the email safety framework and applying risk-based supervision across the DNFBP sectors. Fourthly, we focus on effectiveness in investigations and prosecutions, improving the use of financial intelligence, increasing resources, and introducing efficiencies to reduce case backlogs. Addressing these deficiencies required a significant national effort, cutting across legislation, policy, supervision, law enforcement, and international cooperation. It was not simply a technical exercise. It required changes in behavior, culture, and how institutions worked together. We also faced several threats that will be familiar to many countries going through this process. These included limited skilled email safety resources in the public sector, competing national priorities, particularly legislative and economic reform agendas, agencies operating in silos, and I've heard a couple countries mention this particular issue, and uneven email safety understanding across institutions and the private sector. What made the difference for Jamaica was how we organized ourselves to deliver. We placed strong emphasis on coordination, a common theme in this webinar today, accountability and execution, led by the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, or what we commonly call the NAMLAC, as the central national coordinating body. NAMLAC was supported by a dedicated prime contact secretariat, which became the operational hub of the email safety program. The structure allowed us to track action plan deliverables, monitor the NRA action plan, assign clear agency ownership, escalate bottlenecks, and ensure continuous engagement across government, regulators, law enforcement, and international partners. It also helped us in leveraging technology, strengthen capacity building, and avoid duplication of effort. As a result of this approach, Jamaica achieved tangible and sustainable outcomes. We successfully completed and published NRA 2, supported by a monitored, time-bound action plan. We achieved compliant or larger compliant ratings on 37 of the 40 FATF recommendations. and Jamaica became the first country assessed as compliant with both recommendations 24 and 25. Perhaps just as importantly, we saw a level of interagency cooperation that simply did not exist before, and a wider national understanding of the economic and reputational consequences of AML-CFT non-compliance. Jamaica has now commenced its fifth round mutual evaluation, and normally our focus has shifted from achieving exit to sustaining progress, deliberately applying the lessons learned from the ICRG process. This transition is critical and underscores the advice I would offer, particularly to our African countries that have recently exited the ICRG. And I know that this advice they are already applying, even without my saying. Do not dismantle the coordination mechanisms, political momentum, and accountability structures that delivered your exit. The greatest risk after delisting is treating success at the end of the journey, or as the end of the journey. Instead, countries must deliberately transition from exit mode to institutionalized, business as usual AML-CFT governance. NRA-informed priorities must be embedded into permanent policies, national strategies, budgets, and performance management frameworks. Central coordinating mechanisms must remain strong, resourced, and empowered. Political commitment must continue, even when the immediate pressure of monitoring has passed. This is essential, not only to preserve gains, but also to perform credibly in next mutual evaluation and to avoid entry into enhanced monitoring. I thank you again for the opportunity and to share Jamaica's experience. I look forward to the continuing discussion on this important topic. Back to you, Karina.
Thank you so much, Maureen. And I think indeed it is quite reassuring to hear that the lessons and the advice that you're providing from across the globe resonates with what many of our colleagues shared earlier and what they are doing and that they have thought about, but articulating it so clearly as what we need to make sure, what countries need to make sure, don't treat success as the end of the journey. Institutionalize all the good that's been created and continue to work forward. Yonesha, now it's your turn. Now you've been listening, you've been moderating. Please, also from your experience, the two hats that you have, can you describe to us the added value that can be gathered from the ICRG and the grey listing process, and maybe also list from your experiences what were the three main achievements?
Yeah, thank you, Karina. And also let me seize this opportunity to thank the African Development Bank and the FATF for this opportunity, not only to moderate, but also to share with our audience the value added that can be drawn from the ICRG process. And this process very often is perceived as burdensome, imposing on countries, and of course with serious consequences in the event of non-compliance. Madam President earlier mentioned that this is not a process, this is not a sanctioning process. And I couldn't agree more. I can connect to that, having been personally engaged in this process when Mauritius was grey listed, but also then taking the role of the ICRG co-chair. So I take a very different perspective to this process. And I think for me, and it has been mentioned all across this webinar, the first value added, it secures and sustains a high-level political commitment. So this will be, one of the strongest impact that it brings. We've heard it. Tanzania mentioned that, Nigeria mentioned that, Burkina Faso, even South Africa. Without this political commitment, it will not be possible to engage in those significant reforms and also secure the required resources to be able to do that. So this is what the ICRG does. The first thing is to compel a country and secure that high-level political commitment. And so at the very start, the country must provide, this formal commitment, and it is from the ministerial or head of government level. So this changes the dynamic. And when ministers, prime ministers, or head of state are sensitized to the implication of this grey listing, competent authorities are definitely in a better place to draw attention to long-standing weaknesses and push forward necessary legislative, institutional, or operational reforms. So as it is important to have that commitment at the very beginning, it is also equally important to sustain that. I will not, I will not go again to what other speakers before me mentioned. It is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. And of course, if we want to sustain that reforms, there's no place for complacency. We need to ensure all the structural mechanism and institutional mechanism that has been put in place continues to function and also be sufficiently resourced to be able to ensure we are now addressing other non-strategic deficiencies, because we need to remind ourselves, when a country is placed on the ICRG process, we are focused on the strategic deficiencies, but there are other deficiencies that remains, and that would be highlighted in the mutual evaluation report of a country. So it is equally important that, they focus on addressing the other deficiencies. And so coming to the second thing, I would say the benefit of undergoing this ICRG process would be it strengthened coordination, ownership, and risk awareness across all institutions. This process, again, and speaking from experience, it creates unprecedented level of awareness among competent authorities. So, for example, in Mauritius, from the Prime Minister level up to, all the institutions, all the ministry, they were aware of the consequences of this grey listing and the need and the national priority to ensure we mobilize all the resources to be able to conduct the reforms. So that would mean competent authorities gain a clearer understanding of their respective roles, and also improves cooperation. And as we mentioned also earlier, it reduced then that institutional silo. All the agencies are required to understand the agreed ICRG action plan, and then they are required to translate that into a detailed internal work program to support the high-level political commitment. So that definitely promotes stronger coordination and collaboration among the stakeholders. And I think it was Madame Sauda mentioning even between supervisors and law enforcement agencies. So that level of coordination is essential, and we all know why. Without this coordination and collaboration, it will be difficult to demonstrate effectiveness. So it depends on the supervisors, on the law enforcement agencies, the policymakers, and the private sector working towards that common shared objective. The process also helped to improve risk awareness. And so we were in a better position to identify and assess the money laundering risk, the terrorist financing risk, and then be able to design, a more focused and risk-based measures. So over time, AML-CFT becomes the broader governance and economic policies rather than just a standalone compliance exercise that we do. And for me, the third one is it does provide a rigorous peer review, and then helps also to accelerate capacity building. One of the, when you are grey listed, you of course benefit from the close scrutiny of highly experienced experts from the joint group, including the FATF Secretariat. So the process of submitting progress reports for multiple rounds and going through those technical reviews help a country to benefit from the expert comments. And this in turn, results in a more robust and operationally effective process than where you started. So we, as a country, we also understand, this is not just a one-off event and it has to be continued. So this means all the officers has to be capacitated. And then this also helps driving investment into trainings, improving institutional capacity, or also other regulatory improvements that are needed. So I would say we then also benefit, from the assistance of technical service providers and also knowledge sharing and support from other countries. So many of us during this process have benefited from technical assistance or capacity building programs supported by the FATF members or other development partners such as the African Development Bank. And this definitely help in strengthening national expertise and improve our capacity and capabilities to address and implement those reforms. So I would say, in conclusion, it remains a very, very challenging process, but it serve, if I may use the word Madam President used earlier, it is a catalyst for lasting reforms and also strengthening political ownership and institutional coordination. So that will definitely then help a country to move towards a more effective and sustainable AML-CFT framework.
Thank you very much, Shonesha. I mean, jointly, you and Maureen have really pulled together a lot that was already shared in a very structured way about what are those important factors that need to be focused on moving forward. It mirrors what we heard through the other interventions. But perhaps before we move on, because we're already a little bit behind in this agenda, maybe just give you both one last opportunity in 1 minute. Is there anything else that you want to share for with countries as they embark on this process, or before we move on to the next session? Any final message that you want to share, Maureen?
The only thing I would say that coordination mechanism that you have in place should be well oiled, because it will serve you well going into the 5th round. It is that hub that will give you the basis to ensure that you coordinate and the effectiveness and articulate in your submissions how effective you are in implementing that framework, because it is in that articulation, in telling your story in a cohesive way, in a way that is easily understood by the assessors, that will let them understand the effectiveness of your framework and will keep you out of grey listing.
Thank you so much. Yonesha, over to you.
Thank you. So yes, definitely, I'll join in Maureen on this, and maybe also add it is very important that we continue to bring into the reform. So sometimes we might think, okay, we can just, reduce the pressure a little bit and we will have more time to look into other reforms or deprioritize and give way to other prioritization, especially when we speak about small countries or low capacity countries, which has resources problem. But we know, as Mr. Momo highlighted, when everybody will go underwent a mutual evaluation process, and the effectiveness is tested backward. So there is no place for complacency. Please keep up that momentum. That is really, really very important, and use that time to really reassess and see, okay, what are the gaps? What are the loopholes? What are the legislative amendments that I need to undertake to be able then to allow time and demonstrate effectiveness when a country will be undergoing the next mutual evaluation. What we don't want is to see country coming again on the gray list. And we should definitely use all the lessons learned, the best practices, to make sure, we don't allow situations where that will lead us into a grey listing again. Thank you, Maureen.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is absolutely key. We would not want that. We don't want to see any countries slipping back. It requires rigorous, constant momentum, constant progress. We also know, that FATF's criteria and assessments, they also evolve and change over time. It's very important, I think, to stay on top of all that and maintain a very strong engagement and continuous engagement, working with regional FRSBs, so on and so forth. So, colleagues, Yonesha, my co-chair, my co-moderator, we are now at 11:40. This was meant to be the end, but I do think it is worth picking a few of the questions. We've actually had quite a number. So I would like to just pick a few to ask back to the panelists, and please, it is open to anyone who may wish to come in among those who have spoken. So one question we have is from Yona. She's asking, what was the involvement of MPOs and CSOs in the exit process, civil society organizations and non-public organizations? Any of you who perhaps has a good experience to share on that, just feel free to come in. Open your mic. Madame Bakri, Madame Diallo, je sais pas, j'espère que vous avez entendu la question. L'engagement des sociétés civiles dans le processus. Okay, I will put someone on the spot. Madame Bakari, could you share what was the experience in Nigeria on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Because of the complexity of the terrorism financing we face and the terrorism we face across some parts of Nigeria. And that we felt from the beginning that the MPOs have a very, very strategic role to play in that. Initially, the lack of understanding of the risk and the lack of understanding of the expectations of what they were supposed to do was a challenge for us. But the continuous engagement and then the continuous outreach programs that was done by their regulator, which is the Special Control Office on, unit on money laundering. The continuous engagement is like we said from the, I said earlier, the target for Nigeria is not just about the ICRG process. So it has been an ongoing process from the beginning where we started engaging them, working with them, and then allowing them to take ownership of the program, of the process. Because the most important thing and the most successful outcome of any engagement with the MPOs is to allow them to take ownership of the program, of the process, and then supporting them with the technical expertise, and where necessary, also bringing resources, whether financial or human resources, to support them, and then train them, and then allowing them, and also listen to them. The most important thing you can get from them is that feedback. We've been working collaboratively, and that has led us to to this successful engagement with them, successful outcomes, which were clearly demonstrated during the on-site, where they had engagement with the joint group. And I'm sure that was what led to the exit of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let us take another question, and I'll ask someone else to come in on this one. One question was, how can, it's around organizations and partnerships and coordination. So how can the African Development Bank, as well as the Africa Union and FRSBs, coordinate? And I suppose it's coordination around supporting and capacity support to this. Again, if there's a volunteer to speak, or I shall volunteer someone.
Thank you. I think I can take this one. Yeah, I think the African Development Bank can be a very good partner in spearheading at least providing either financial support or also identifying key resource persons that can take forward the capacity building sessions. And also when we countries are conducting outreach programs for the NPOs and the like, because sometimes, we plan to have a number of sessions, outreach programs and awareness to private sector, but also public sector in general, to strengthen that collaboration, but to ensure that at least, for instance, for the case of NPOs, they are fully aware that they could be used for terrorist financing abuse. So to be, at least to be aware that there is risk in their institutions being abused because of maybe just lack of awareness, of lack of that knowledge of the risks in this area. So AfDB can be a good partner in supporting financially, but also either providing technical assistance or at least identifying technical expertise that they can help in this area. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sauda. I'm going to just sorry, yes, is someone
No, Karina, I just wanted to say maybe I can I see also another interesting question coming from Mr. Menon, and mainly to highlight challenges in getting the private sector on board during the grey listing process. I know I'm sure our speakers will be able to speak to that. What did you do to really get the engagement of the private sector during this very demanding process?
Well, if I could take that on from a Jamaican perspective, it was rather easy, to tell you the truth, because the impact of grey listing impacted the private sector. So they were encouraged. They wanted Jamaica to get off that list because it would make doing business easier for them. Downside of grey listing, enhanced due diligence from countries. Jamaica depends on correspondent banking to trade with the world. It's a very open economy. So correspondent banking relationships is very critical for Jamaica. So getting the private sector on board was easy because they had vested interest. So the banks, all the economic sectors, they were eager to assist anything that they could do to assist. So in terms of the outreach, what they had to do, their own risk assessments when they were onboarding customers, that for the financial sector, getting them to participate and to be responsive, given that they are the gatekeepers, it was very easy to get them to participate in the process because they had vested interest.
Thank you very much, Maureen. I think this is also the case. I can relate to that, and that was also the case for Mauritius, especially in a small jurisdiction. And this is where when the public and the private sector comes together to make sure we do our best to address the action plan and ensure there is no disruption or negative effect on the correspondent banking. So definitely that was, I would say, a reason for getting together. But also what is important, that has led the way in continuing that partnership, that relationship. So even after the delisting, we've kept on with the platforms that we had for sharing of information, and we do meet with them quite regularly, at least on a quarterly basis. So that conversation, that engagement really helps in demonstrating and working towards, as we all want, improving that compliance culture. At the end of the day, it's not a question of just imposing sanction. What we want to see as policymakers, as supervisors, is there is that improvement in compliance culture. So thank you very much for that. Karina, do we still have time for one more question?
Yes, I think so. Let's have it be the last one.
All right, okay. So I think there is one interesting but also important one. What advice can you give to countries that are still in the grey list but with low political commitment? And I think there could be no better person to answer that than Elisa. We have the president of the FATF here. So, and you mentioned, Elisa, earlier about, that the need to have this political commitment at the very beginning of the process. And I know as co-chair, the FATF makes sure, that the country is constantly reminded, guided what has to be done. And when there is maybe, I would say, a dip in that commitment, the Secretariat will always make sure, that they get the commitment. So what advice can you give to countries that they still face that, in the grey list, but still facing a low political commitment?
Thank you very much, Janesha. You're right. Political commitment are one of the two ingredients, as it has been signaled by everyone in this webinar, together with the coordination internally. From our side, what we do is to engage at a high level. It's usually the Ministry of Finance, but it can be other ministries depending on where the AML-CFT coordination sits. So we engage every round when there's a report. So we make sure that the leadership know where the process is. And we also engage by visiting the regional bodies and speaking with the authorities on the importance of the process and making sure that there is that commitment. It is a challenge to keep the political commitment when you have elections, when you have change of governments, and then for the authorities, kind of like round zero and restarting. That's why it's so important, the executive committee or the coordination agencies that you have, because that provides the stability that you might not have with a change of an administration.
Excellent. I think, there could be no better way to end this series of Q&A. So thank you again for this intervention. Karina, over to you.
Well, Yonesha, it's now our turn to try and sum up the incredibly rich discussion that's taken place before we move to the final session of closing. And that is quite daunting, and I don't want to, because I think people have actually shared in a way that's very practical and very clear, emphasizing the importance of sustaining those institutions that are set up as you go through the delisting process. Building in accountability measures throughout the process, keeping up the good work, keeping the focus on the reforms, that there are reforms beyond what may have got countries on the grey list, and that those provide opportunity for continuation. And communication, I think Madame Diallo and in Burkina Faso, communication, collaboration, coordination, all the C's, engaging with stakeholders across the board, private sector, civil society. When countries are able to do that and they sustain it, then they're on the right track. And just maybe, to come back to the question that was posed around the role of FRSBs, FATF, the African Development Bank, and the AU. We are all there to support countries through this process, and we are coordinating, and we are also coordinating on how we can provide capacity support in this regard. The African Development Bank, we're working very closely, for example, with the regional FRSB bodies, ESAMLAG, GIABA, and looking how to reinforce these incredibly important institutions so that they can play their role and successfully support countries as they navigate through these processes. We also work and collaborate closely with FATF and the AUC, and this is really incredibly important. So there are mechanisms in place to ensure that. We are, for example, the African Development Bank is an observer on the FATF, so we join the meetings, we listen, we take note, and we engage, and we will continue to do so. So I would like to bring this Q&A to a close and invite Madame Violaine Clerc, who is the FATF Executive Secretary, to provide some closing remarks on behalf of FATF. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Is it okay? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Bonjour, bon après-midi à tous ceux qui sont en ligne. Let me say a few words in French before switching back to English, as French is my language. And je suis tellement heureuse qu'il y ait beaucoup de participants dont c'est aussi la langue, le français. Et je pense que cet événement aujourd'hui marque un grand pas en avant, car nous avons échangé il y a quelques mois avec les représentants de la Banque africaine de développement, avec Monsieur Koulibaly, avec Monsieur Van Kellekom, qui a quitté la Banque africaine de développement pour devenir responsable de l'autorité de supervision à Maurice. Et il avait dit quelque chose de très important parce que j'étais déçue qu'il quitte en disant bah alors ce projet qu'on met en place, est-ce qu'il va pouvoir continuer? Et il a dit qu'il avait promis que lui partant, ça ne changeait rien parce que c'était un engagement de la Banque africaine de développement de travailler avec le GAFI pour mettre en place ce type d'action qu'on a expérimenté collectivement ensemble aujourd'hui pour tirer les bénéfices de ce qui est un processus very challenging. So let me move back to English for our colleagues who are more comfortable with the English language. I think it was very important for me to, and it's the first thing that I want to say, is to thank the African Development Bank colleagues because it's a start of a partnership on our side. And it illustrates how collectively we can, overcome obstacles, overcome challenges, and build, sustainable system, and not for the benefit of saying, okay, I have a wonderful AML CFT system. It's for the benefit of our citizens, our family, our children, so that they can live in the society where they don't fear going in the street. They are not exposed to drug traffickers. I'm a mother of 4, so I'm very sensitive to all of that. They are not exposed to terrorist acts. So I think for us, it's a duty to overcome this obstacle, even if it is very, very challenging. And the FATF will not deny that it is a challenging process. So that's why we try to mobilize all the forces that we have, our convening powers. Also, I heard about the IMF, the World Bank, the observers, the development banks like the African development banks, to help these countries, which unfortunately are grey listed, to overcome this challenge, to build and sustain reforms that will help them not to go back to the grey list. Because the most things that we want to avoid is having countries going back to the grey list, because it means that we will collectively have failed. We will have failed collectively. So we will really try to do our best and to think of the different way. And today, I think sharing and sharing experiences, listening to countries that experience this journey was very, very useful. It was an eyes opener for some countries, some participants. It's also a way for them to say, okay, maybe I should reach out to this country because the solution that they put in place was very, very interesting. And maybe I can duplicate that and do that, put that in place in my country. And because, of course, the discussion was very rich. There is never enough time for the question, but you need to see that as a starting point for, connecting people, working together, and mobilizing against all our energies and forces to overcome these challenges. So thank you also, Yonesha, for all your work in the African Joint Group. I think Ines is sitting next to me, and I can't say, I can't say all the positive words that we have to have you as a co-chair for the African Joint Group, because for us, it's really an added value to have you with us, working with us. Thank you also to Maureen as the Jamaican head of delegation to FATF, because also it's a very inspiring model. Thank you to Momo, who is a really inspiring model too, and who was indeed, as he said, it was very difficult for the FATF members to be on the grey list. So thank you also for sharing your experience. And I hope that everyone learned from this. So where are we now? So we had 24 countries grey listed in the course of the last round of mutual evaluation. 17 now have exited the list, 7 remain and are making positive progress against their action plans. So what we want to do now is to continue supporting these countries to get out of the list as soon as possible. And I think the key word that we heard of all along this seminar is we want to sustain these results. So sustain this result and use all the tools that we have to help sustaining this result. So as Elisa, the FATF president, highlighted at the beginning of the webinar, there is an ecosystem in place and that we continuously try to improve and to strengthen to support countries being more effective. So this ecosystem is playing a key role, in particular for countries in ICRG process. So let me just refer to some of the tools that we have, because I had in mind to recap what people said during the webinar, but most have been said already. So I try to focus on some other aspects. So during the ICRG process, countries have access to the exchange of best practices, lessons learned from experts in the region. And we hope, and we definitely would like that this connection and networks continue. Secondly, FATF-style regional bodies play a critical role. We are in close contact and we work in close partnership with them all along this process to support their members to be more effective and prepare for exiting the ICRG and the grey list when they are in, but also for prepare for the evaluation process. Because I think we all said high-level political commitment is key. We need to sustain that. But what is key is what is, in front of us, the new round of mutual evaluation. And we really need to secure and make sure that we will help countries, reinforcing their system, AML-CFT system, and not being grey listed. So what we try to do with the FSRBs is to develop extensive training and also peer learning. So you will see more and more the FATF developing this peer learning and development forum, really concrete, forum where we can exchange experiences and where countries can learn from the other. So that's what we have in mind. And that's also why we also work more closely with TA providers, technical assistance providers, because in this ecosystem, they can also play a key role. And that's also why we work more and more, not only with public authorities, but with the private sector, because also the private sector has to play a key role in this ecosystem. So I will not prolong my speech. I think I was really encouraged by the constructive stories shared by the country today. And I also understand from my team, and that's really rewarding, that the spirit and work of the Africa Joint Group is really one of teamwork and collaboration. And when I'm talking about the Joint Group, I think it's with the countries, not only the people who are leading the group, not only the ICRG reviewers, but really the countries. And the discussion we had today, while they illustrate that the process is challenging, and it must be a challenging one, it also delivers significant gains for your citizens. And for that reason, the work must continue. So I will stop there. Thank you to all of you. And I think I really hope that it's only a starting point for all of us, and that we will have more of these events to be able to better support all of countries all around the world, and in particular the African region. Merci beaucoup, et j'espère que nous aurons la possibilité de continuer d'interagir et de travailler ensemble à créer un système de lutte contre le blanchiment, de financement du terrorisme qui permettent à nos générations et aux générations futures de s'épanouir dans un environnement qui soit secure, I don't like the term secure, mais dans un environnement qui leur permette cet épanouissement et avoir une belle vie devant eux. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much for those inspiring closing words and leaving us also with the human face of this, of why we're doing that, which also was shared by your president. Eric Ogunle, who is our director of the Africa Development Institute, I now invite you to share closing remarks on behalf of the African Development Bank. Thank you so much. Eric, over to you.
Thank you so much, Karina, and partners, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I really wish I had the power to extend the time allocated for this webinar. And the reason is because it's been a very great learning experience for me, and I'm very sure for all of us. But as the saying goes, whatever has a beginning must have an end. So as we bring this webinar to a close, I want to extend my very most sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers for their thoughtful and insightful inputs, contributions, and recommendations that were made, as well as the lessons that were shared. I also want to do the same to all of you for your very active engagement and also for the commitment that you demonstrated throughout the course of this discussion today. This indeed has been more than a webinar. It has been a collective commitment to Africa's financial integrity, a commitment led by our powerful and able women leading the way. Did you notice that around 80% of the speakers were women, including all the moderators? Very phenomenal, very interesting. We really appreciate you all and thank you so much for this high gender representation. Indeed, we have celebrated today what we see as regional achievement, the successful exit from the FATF grey list. This milestone reflects countless hours of collaboration, coordination, and problem solving across institutions. It is indeed a testament to what we can accomplish when we share a clear purpose, common goal, and work together with determination. But what needs to be etched on our minds, which has been repeated throughout today's conversation, is that our work does not end here, rather it starts here. It will be important for us to remember the popular wise saying, to never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. This emphasizes continuous improvement and perseverance. So I congratulate the countries for this very huge achievements and urge them to never settle for less. They should strive for continuous excellence. But this requires sustaining compliance, strengthening supervision, deepening our risk understanding, continued vigilance, and keeping pace with global standards. The system that we have built together must remain dynamic. The cooperation we have forged must remain strengthened and very active. And the culture of integrity and accountability we have nurtured must continue to grow. The discussion we've had today have highlighted our strengths, but they have also helped us to identify areas where we can reinforce our efforts, where we can work together, whether through capacity building, and that came out very clear, cross-agency coordination, technical assistance, data and technology improvements, as well as the ongoing engagement with the private sector. So as we move forward from this point, let us carry two important lessons in our mind. The first one is the confidence that we have demonstrated, because these countries, Africa as a whole, has shown that we can meet demanding international expectations. And the second thing we need to carry with us is the commitment, because maintaining this momentum will protect our financial system. It will support inclusive growth and sustainable development, as well as transformation on the continent, and enhance our country's reputation in the global arena. So I really, really want to thank every institution represented here today. I want to also appreciate every expert who contributed. I also want to express my profound appreciation to the organizing team. As always, we have our IT colleagues who are always behind the scene, helping us to ensure that we have seamless conversation. And to our interpreters too, we really appreciate your efforts by ensuring that we can hear each other and understand each other. And every team member who continues to drive this agenda forward, we say thank you very much for your contributions. Indeed, all of us, our work matters. And that is why we have all contributed our bits and pieces to the success of this conversation today. So it is important, therefore, that we continue to strengthen our country, to strengthen our safeguards and also our financial integrity. And that will help us to build not just the current generation, but the generations ahead. Above all of these, I really want to thank our partner, the Financial Action Task Force, for trusting the bank and joining hands with us to organize this event. It is our hope that this partnership will continue to grow. And congratulations once again on this shared achievement. I thank all of you for your dedication. So let us continue to work together. And we have all said this in the course of this discussion. But we have to do that with vigilance, with collaboration, and with pride. As we know, integrity, especially in Africa, is not an option. It is a pathway to prosperity, and we want to ensure that we focus on that. So I thank all of you for the time we have spent together today, and I wish all of us a very productive and successful path as we take and move forward from here. Thank you once again. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Merci
Obrigado.
beaucoup. Thank you to all. Thank you.
Shukran.
Very much.
Thank you. And that brings our
Merci
webinar to an end. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Bye.
Thank you to all. Bye.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci.
Muito
Au revoir.
obrigado. Au
Goodbye.
revoir.
Thank you. Obrigado.
Yeah.